Hello guys, and welcome to my video about strategy calculation. Today I'm going to show you how to easily calculate your fastest way from the start to the finish line by using not more than your own lap times and Excel. So before we even get to the calculations, I can't stress enough how important consistency is and driving without mistakes. So when setting up your car or when preparing for a race, you should value consistency a little bit over your optimal race time, because mistakes can always happen, especially since only very few of us have the time to excessively practice to get their maximum out of the car. So try to stay consistent and set the car up in a way that you can easily drive the duration of the stint without a mistake. So knowing this, we go to the racetrack, we drive our stint and record the lap times, either by screenshot or screen record, and put them into a spreadsheet document. For this video or for this calculation, I've taken my lap times from the 24 Hours for Anna race 2 years ago. What leads us to our next step, looking at the factors that come into play when thinking about our race strategy. So the race has a duration of 4 hours with a 15-minute break in between that you can choose freely, and one stint on the soft tire. So now we simply have to find out what is our fastest way or comparable fastest way from pit stop to pit stop. To get to this information, I simply looked at how the average lap time throughout the stint develops. By doing this and considering how the tire behaves through the stint, we can now find out in what range our stint length would work out pretty well. So for example, at roundabout lap 14 to 15, the tire starts to drop and degrade. And up until lap 20, the tire still works. So the effective range of our strategy is between lap 14 to 20. Knowing this, we are actually nearly finished with calculating, because at this point, we simply have to find out for us and time-wise what is our fastest way to the finish line. So what I do is I take the stint lengths and divide the race time by them. So I know the amount of pit stops that we can possibly have and the amount of time that is left when we finish our strategy. At this point, simply due to the fact that the times are very consistent, we will see that we will roundabout drive the same amount of laps with different pit stops, but now we simply have to find out which one works out the best for me, or let's say for you, and what we have to consider to find this out. So the tire limit strategy with 20 laps will be a 4-stop, with the last stint being pretty much another stint. This strategy would technically be the fastest one to the finish line, but the problem is I'm not driving all by myself. There will also be other people on the track, and the very long stint increases the risk of crashing simply due to the tire being absolutely down. So I would not recommend taking a strategy that increases the risk of you crashing. Also, the aggressive and the tire drop strategy with 14 to 15 laps, they are pretty much the same since they are 6 stops. But the problem is also with them, they only work out if you drive very, very fast. So this also increases the risk of crashing out. So the range that we can effectively use now is between lap 16 to 19. To now finally find our race strategy, we have to look at the options we have now. So the conservative strategy with 16 laps is definitely a 6-stop. Or with stretching the last stint by 1 or 2 laps, it also becomes a 5-stop race. So we can drive 16 lap stint, but we can also have a look at how we can use the 17 laps or the 18 laps. Also, the 19 stint lap, the variation 2 in this chart, drops out simply due to the fact that the last stint will be 4 minutes, and by that we would have to either do a splash and dash, which would cost us a lot of time, and we would be in the range of the tire being very bad, so round about 21, 22 laps of age. So we more or less will stick to the variation with the 17 laps, simply due to the fact that I felt the most comfortable with it, I could lap the most consistent, and we have a last stint that is about 26 minutes long, so we can perfectly use the soft tire in that stint, because the soft tire also degrades a bit quicker but works on a shorter stint, so we can use it in the best way. Ultimately, the 17 lap stint gives us the opportunity to always add or take off 1 lap from the stint without getting into a risky situation, let's say at the end of the tire life, or having to push too hard to still have a good lap time. So considering all of these factors, it's the most comfortable strategy to pick, and a very open strategy where you can just, if you see that your opponent is driving pretty much the same pace, you can still somehow switch to a strategy with 1 stop less, or you can still try to undercut him to get the upper hand. Whereas when driving a strategy with a lot of pit stops, you rely on your raw pace, or when driving with just 4 stops, you rely on the tire surviving, which will also be very difficult with the soft tire at the end. So the sweet spot in this race, or under these circumstances, is simply a 5-stop. So this is not just the best strategy, it's also a very good way of approaching longer races or endurance races, because it's always important to keep the safety margin, because if you crash out, if you spin, if you destroy your tire by, let's say, flat spotting it, depending on the game that you are playing, you will lose an amount of time that you can never take off again by pushing hard. And to finish this video now, I will tell you how the race turned out 2-3 years ago. I actually won, simply due to the fact that I was a little bit slower, because I couldn't get out everything from the car, from the tire, especially on the soft tire. On 1 lap, I could never keep up, but simply due to the fact that I saved 2 stops compared to them, because they went for the 7-stop strategy, I won with a good margin. I also let them fight. I realized very early that I can't follow pace-wise, so I had my plan. I kept my cool, and I finished the race. And I also made some mistakes during the race. I had a few laps where I didn't hit the bus stop chicane well, but I didn't crash, I didn't spin, I kept my cool. I'm not saying this to boast about it. I've had a lot of races where I didn't, where I crashed out, where I got more and more frustrated and ultimately didn't win. So always keep that in mind. It's especially in endurance races, mistakes can always happen, and you will win if you keep the amount of mistakes very small. If you have any questions or something to add, feel free to write a comment. I'm having this channel simply to share my knowledge with other racers and also just for fun. So if you have questions, if you want to know anything about the calculation, about other factors playing into the calculation, feel free to ask. I will also share the chart that I've been using somehow. And please leave a like and a subscribe if you like it, to not miss any other videos, since they won't come on a regular basis. And have a nice day.